You see, your paper is like your child, and when you send it to an editor, you don't mind a little change in the dress or a little method of combing of the hair or different shoes or socks. But if he shaves the head of the child, then you certainly are going to object. But there are two ways of looking at it. One is, as in my own experience, I have found these editorial comments are very, very useful, and when I incorporate those, I usually find that my paper is much better than what I sent initially. There has never been an occasion when I can remember that the editorial comment was, after incorporating, I found the paper had been spoiled. But occasionally it so happens that the paper is so mutilated that you don't recognize the final proof which comes to you, and you have at full liberty then to object to the editor, saying that this is not the format in which I want to publish my work, and he cannot go ahead and publish. And at least on one occasion when I did that, the editor has agreed to my suggestion and has put back the original paper. So these things you have to see how much that change makes a difference. If your total creativity is destroyed, naturally you don't like to put your name on top, because ultimately it is going in your name in print, not in the editor's name. Now we come to this particular presentation, writing the results section for a scientific paper. Going back to the Bradford Hill questions, it is the section in which you answer the query, what did you find? Very simple. That is the only query that you need to answer in the results section, and you do it with the combination of text, tables and figures to make it more interesting. If it is all text, it won't be interesting. Naturally, if it is all tables and figures with no text, it won't be understood. You have to have a judicious combination of text, tables and figures. It is a good policy to start the results section with a brief description of the experiment or method without giving much details in one or two sentences, instead of just starting abruptly. You see, at the bottom of that slide I have shown what an abrupt transition would make. If you start the results by saying the age and gender distribution of the control group is shown in table 1, not nice to start a result section like that, abruptly like that. See the first one, that 30 patients with Barrett esophagus were prospectively assigned to receive banding without resection, and so on and so forth. And then you say one line only, the age and gender distribution is shown. It makes it easier to read. Simple thing, but often you find when you open an article, the first thing is a figure and a description of a figure. What are the rules of writing results? And we will have a group task to enumerate some of those. It should be clear and there should be no repetition, because the section where you tend to err on writing too much is usually the results, and that is where the volume of your work increases. You cut it down. You don't have to write too many things. Brief but adequately comprehensive. That is, it should not be so brief that nobody will understand what you are talking about. There should be enough details, but not unnecessary details. And this is a common mistake we see in dissertations very often, that there will be a figure, there will be a table showing the same thing, and there will also be a paragraph describing what is shown in the figure and the table. In a dissertation it is maybe passed over, but it will never be passed over in a scientific paper. So use a combination of text, tables and figures, but not all of them. Use the text as a complement to summarize findings in tables or figures, to highlight and not to repeat. If you have a table of 7 rows, there may be only 1 or 2 of those factors which require emphasis. The rest of it the person can read from the full table. So use the text part to highlight those 2 or 3 points, that significant changes were seen in this and this, but not in this. You don't have to repeat the p-values again in the text, because they are there already in the tables. Combine the text, tables and figures to condense data and to highlight trends. And Ravi has already told you, the method section you write in with subheadings and in sections to make it readable. And in the results also follow the same sequence as in methods. And liberally use subheadings and paragraphs. If you have a 1 full page of written A4 written material as a result, very difficult to read. no paragraph in the results section should be more than 3 or 4 or 5 lines. Then only it becomes easier to comprehend. Because you see, we have difficulty with numbers, and if you have a whole lot of numbers in one page, it's difficult, but you can deal with it in paragraph by paragraph. Try to provide context wherever is required, such as describing the question that was addressed by that particular observation. Again, going back to what I said before, to make it readable. You might have written it in methods, but it is nice to remind the reader again. In order to determine the effect of so and so, the data were grouped like this, and then show the results of that data. Results are something that you have done, therefore, always only past tense. There is no role for any other tense in results. Do not try to make the mistake of trying to explain anything in the results. Result is just presentation of findings. All the description should come in discussion. Never include raw data or intermediate calculation. That is, you have arrived at the final result after 2 or 3 steps. If it is not relevant, do not put it there. If the editor wants, he will ask you, and then you can provide. Place tables and figures, if possible, immediately after the relevant text or as close as possible. It is not nice to read a paragraph and then turn 2 pages to see the corresponding figure or tables. So, it should be just next to that. And when you are using tables, it is a temptation to use the tab key for making the columns. Never do that, because they will never align well. It will be half a space to the left or right, and then when you want to make a change, the whole row will change. So, you have in Word the table menu, you pull it down and then use the table menu, and then if you do not want the grid lines, you can always hide the grid lines. Now, tables, when you are presenting in a forum like this, can never be very complex. It can't be more than 6 or 7 rows and not more than 3 or 4. But when you put it down into a publication, you will find tables which are a whole page with 9 or 10 columns and about 20 rows. It is permissible in a written communication to put complex tables, because there may be several details of the study material that you want the reader to know about. You can't describe everything in the text, so you just put it down as a table. Avoid unnecessary tables, avoid too many tables, and avoid inappropriate tables. I will show you examples of all this. This, of course, is the role of the editor. A table should never be split. All parts of a table should appear in one page. The headings for the tables should be clear and stand alone. That is, when you read the heading, you should know everything about that table. It is not just age and gender incidence if you write. That does not make sense. Age and gender incidence in what population you must write. Then only the table can stand alone. And whatever footnotes required on the table, put it at the bottom. Now, this is a simple table. If you see, the heading is there, then the subheadings, and there is an item there that I want to draw the reader's attention to. So, I put either an asterisk or a number there, and then write what it refers to. And if you have more than one, then instead of an asterisk, you use 1, 2, 3 and write what 1, 2 and 3 mean. Sometimes you may have to use abbreviations in tables, because tables you cannot write the full word. Then this is the place where you need to put what the abbreviation means. Now, these are tables with subheadings. That was a table without subheading, and this is a table with subheading. So, in subheadings, you just merge all the cells, put your subheading there and put another subheading there, and likewise you put your asterisks and describe. Now, this is what I meant by inappropriate use of tables. This is actually taken from a publication. All that the person wanted to say was there were 20 individuals in the group, 11 of whom were men and 9 were women. Is there any need to make a table to show that? But it was there. I have actually taken it from a publication. You just have to write it in one line. It is a wastage of space and does not clarify. And what is worse, sometimes this will be given in 3 decimal places or 2 decimal places. How many men and how many women. Now, these are two examples I want to show you. You can write it like this or like this. The author wants to say some experiment he has done. The temperatures at this 3, 6, 9, 12 and 15 minutes were 25, 27, 29, 31, 32 and 32 degrees respectively. Is this easier to read or this is easier to read? Table. So, this is where a table is must. If you write it like this, you are writing the same thing, but you are not making it easy for the thing. So, this is an appropriate table, and what I showed you before was an inappropriate table. Now, in this one, human tendency is to read it like this, left to right. Can you make this table putting temperature this side and time this side? Then it won't be easy, is it not? The criterion is we want to see what the temperature was at various times. So, the time should be first and the temperature should be second. This what I said is a complex. This is taken from an American journal, published thing. You will never present it to an audience. If I put a PowerPoint like this, all of you will howl. But you see, all these headings he wants to draw attention, and all this he wants to draw attention, and if he starts describing this, it will take 5 pages of text. So, he just puts it as a table for those who want to read. Now, this also I have taken from a journal. Is this appropriate or inappropriate? Do you think this title is all right, what I told you? Is it a standalone title? Patient age, we don't know what it means. This is from a very highly ranked journal with a high impact factor. I have just taken it from there. And that less than 3 years, 3 patients, 4 and all that, and individual ages of these patients. We have to see whether all this information is necessary for the reader or not. To putting it like this makes it harsh on the eye, is it not? If you want individual ages to be known, then why group them? You have grouped them, but also you want to show individual, then it makes no sense. Then you just put this in as a table and write whatever findings against that age, is it not?
But I think this one is much easier than the other one because
I am not comparing the two.
No, okay.
These are standalones.
What I really want to understand is that you see, to a layman, if the other table is more difficult to read, they are writing it if it is 5 pages.
Yes, I agree. Writing it is 5 pages, reading it is 1 page, but equally difficult to read. But the information is there for those who want that information. Is it not? That is the important thing. I am not showing this to compare the two tables, to see each table individually and see whether it is permissible or not. Now we come to figures. There should be just enough figures. If you put too many figures, no editor is going to accept, and therefore you have to avoid unnecessary figures. And there is a common tendency to put lot of color into figures. Now, if you are bringing out a dissertation or you are bringing out a pamphlet or a brochure, you have all colored figures. But in a journal, there is a price to a page. Now, a colored page is several times more expensive than one, and all journals will send you a bill of $250 per photograph, colored photograph. Now, it is a waste of expense because color has a role and color has no role in some situations. I will show you use of color in these things, pie diagrams, bars. There will be no dispute that operative photographs need color, is it not? Sometimes clarity is lost in black and white. Patient photographs may require color if what you are showing is a change which should be visible. Photomicrographs are preferably in color. In black and white, particularly immunohistochemistry and special stains may not show. And wherever clarity is required, only in color you can produce that clarity, you put color, otherwise avoid color. And to come back to what Ravi was telling, whenever you put a patient photograph, always mask the eyes. Use only that part of the body which is required to be shown. There is no need to show the whole photograph if you want to show an abdominal scar. And if you want to show the whole patient or the face of the patient, the eyes should always be masked. No journal will accept it otherwise. For figures, the legend is usually at the bottom, unlike tables where it is at the top. it's very necessary to see that the axes are numbered and clearly labeled, and they should be a proper font, because many of these are now online, and if the font size is not proper, you cannot read online also. What are the rules of various figures? Use a line diagram or scattergram if both the variables, the independent and dependent, are numeric. For instance, one is age and the other is weight. Then you can use this. But if one is numeric and the other is not numeric, you use a bar graph. I will show you those examples. Use pie charts for proportions, and use what is called an exploded pie to highlight one segment of that pie, and use a scattergram to call attention to outliers, to show that your data is skewed because of these outliers, and to show correlation. One way of reducing the length is to use symbols instead of writing the full description in words, but use proper symbols. Don't use less than if you mean more than. Wherever a sentence starts the results with a number, should always be spelled. It should not be written in the form of numbers like this. That's not good grammar. And here, put a space between number and unit, 75 space kilogram. The only exception is when it indicates percentages. Don't put too many decimal points if they don't make sense. Sometimes whole numbers will do. Sometimes it needs to be only in one decimal, sometimes two. Depends on what factor that you are trying to describe. This is very important, This less than, more than, and 001 is no longer acceptable. Nowadays, you have to write the exact p values, and that is required for two reasons. If somebody wants to do a meta-analysis, he requires your exact p value, and if he wants to calculate confidence intervals, he requires your exact p value. So most people will send it back if you write less than 0.05 and ask you to write down the exact p value. This is another common mistake I find in papers. Where you want to show dispersion, you must always use standard deviation, not standard error. So use standard deviation and use the same number of decimal points. I have seen papers where the mean will be in 2 decimal points and the standard deviation will be in 1. That is not acceptable. Now, this just for your feedback. Do you think this is all right? Without color? Acceptable? Bar diagram? Right. This one? Does it require to be in color? No. Right. This is from a journal printed in color. What's the use of color here? There are only 3 parameters they are trying to compare. You can hatch them or put a striation or a dot. You can separate. Why do you need to waste on color? This one is a pie chart. Not appropriate. When a pie chart has got only 2 or 3 segments, there is no need for color. But when it has got a lot of segments, then you need color for separation. This is what I called an exploded pie. Do you think it's appropriate? I said an exploded pie is to highlight 1 or 2. If you explode everything like Rawalpindi, then what is the use of putting a pie chart? You see, everything is exploded. You might as well show it as a unexploded pie. But color is appropriate because there are so many different things. If you put it in black and white, this will not be clear. This is scattergram. One major advantage of a scattergram is to show correlation. Supposing this parameter and this parameter are correlated, you will find that the scattergram lies like this. All the values will fall on it. If they are negatively correlated, you will find it lies like this. All the values will fall. So this is useful not only to show outliers like this, but also to show correlation. Color? Not required, is it not? Yes. Although I said color generally is not required, here the 2 lines are so close that if you don't put color, you cannot separate them visually. So here color is a must, otherwise you cannot use this line diagram. Color? Necessary, is it not? Because there is some lot of overlapping. Not required. Not required. Tell you, impact factor of this journal is 3.65, which is pretty high. I won't name the journal. They charge some $165 per color figure. You have to pay. They don't have money. If you are willing to pay, they will put it. Little difficult, is it not? There is so much of overlapping. You will have to think whether you like to put this diagram in your article or not. All these are not cooked up by me, they are taken from various journals. He is just showing points on a line. This bar is all right. Looking at it, all these empty spaces, it looks as if a bar is inappropriate here. But you see what he is trying to show, from a negative value to such a high positive value, there is a change. And looking at it, it becomes obvious, is it not, that the change is so much, and that effect will be lost if you try to put it in text, whereas from the diagram it becomes clear. Anyway, message is clear. Look at it and see, make your own decision whether color is necessary. Thank you. I am not going to go into greater details. We will leave you to work it out in the group task. But if you have any doubts about what I presented, please ask me now. Yes.
With our tables and figures and then go on to the text, does it make our work easier, or do we start
in
writing up the result section?
Writing, yes. I always find, this is highly personal, that if I have the tables and figures, at least the tables in front of me, it makes it easier for me to write the text, because you can see the table, you can decide what needs to be highlighted and then put down the words. Same holds true for figures. By and large, for most people it works out that way, but there may be, I cannot be very certain about this, there may be people who like to start with the written material and then wherever appropriate make the tables. But I can work only if I have the tables and figures in front of me, and that is what I do first when I start writing a paper. After methods, I make the tables and figures.
And tables usually, they shouldn't have the grid lines.
It's up to you. If you publish a lot of grid lines, it does not look nice.
But not.
Then you can hide it.
That one.
By and large, in a text, if you have a grid line, it does not look nice.
To put grid lines, except the first and the last one.
Yeah. Remove the grid lines.
Generally, journals do not accept grid lines.
Grid lines.
They only know the horizontal lines. Only horizontal lines they accept. They are not grid lines. Now, even if you send it, okay, there is nothing wrong in sending it. I mean, when you are preparing a manuscript, I mean, you put grid lines and send it. Well, editors will remove it. But because now most of the journals, I mean, they use computers to say make the page, pages and this thing, and you will also be sending it in an electronic form. So they will remove it and then they will put it.
Could you please explain what are outliers that you wanted to highlight in the scattergram?
Yeah, that is, you are measuring some variables, many of them are clustered together and they give a nice mean and a standard deviation. But there may be some values which are extreme, is it not? When you calculate only a mean and standard deviation, those things are lost, they do not project, because they are so few, they do not affect the mean or the standard deviation so much. But when you put it down in a scattergram, you see 5 dots are lying far away, so you know that there are outliers.
Some of the computer programs give the exact p values, but it's 0.0000. Is it advisable to give all zeros like that, 4 digits, for example?
When you write 0, it's understood. You don't have to write many zeros. P is equal to 0 is same as 0000 or whatever it is. But they say you give a p to 2 significant digits. Supposing it's 0032, you write 0032, not 0032456 and all that. To 2 significant digits. That is what is required by and large.
So one more question regarding presentation of tables and figures. A lot of journal doesn't allow us to tell where we want to put it. So in a cover letter, do we mention that we want it here or something like that, or we leave it to the journalist?
Usually you will find that by the editors know that, they will put it as close to that, but they also have to make the page. So in making that page, there may be a little separation, but usually they know that and they'll put it close to the text.
But then if you don't like it, you can always ask the editor to change the...
Yeah, provided the page can be formatted that way, Otherwise, if it's going to cause lot of disturbance in page making, they won't do it.